I'm Emma.
Hi, I'm Wendy.
Hi, I'm Vivian.
Hi, I'm Tim.
Hi, I'm Olivia.
Hi, my name's Lucas.
Hi, I'm Angela.
Hi, I'm Amy.
Hi everybody, my name is Maya. Welcome back to another Mingo Gringo video. I am a guest star on this video today, and I'm here with my teacher in my class from DIY YouTube Journalism, and we're here in Washington Square Park.
All right, so for this entire semester, we've been talking about what it takes to be a journalist on YouTube, or really, what's the difference between a regular YouTube video and a YouTube video with journalistic standards. So perhaps you've learned something, perhaps you've learned nothing. I guess we're gonna find out. Who would like to begin?
I feel like YouTube, compared to mainstream media, sort of got rid of a lot of the gatekeeping that like mainstream media has, and like broadcast journalism and newspapers, like a lot of that has to go through editors and stuff, and so YouTube got rid of that for the film industry, for journalism, all of that. If you're an independent journalist on YouTube, then you sort of have to start doing that gatekeeping yourself, and I think that a lot of the standards in journalism exist for the reason of like making sure that things are to a certain level of accuracy, and so that you can have integrity as like someone who's providing information to a mass amount of people. So if you're gonna label yourself as a journalist on any social media platform, you sort of have to also live up to that level of integrity.
For me, having to be like more personal, that's like difficult to do in traditional journalism, to like insert yourself in the story, but what I found with like YouTube was sometimes it's necessary to like connect to your audience. You need to sort of be able to be visible in your story in some way.
You're coming from a journalism background going on to YouTube. What about the people who came the opposite direction?
I think that coming from more of a YouTube and personality aspect, that journalism has a lot more ethics involved than I ever imagined. So I've never done a journalism class until this summer. So I learned a lot about ethics and, you know, standing your own ground as an independent storyteller. And just having a lot of integrity, I think. A lot of promotion happens on YouTube, and I think that we kind of went into like the divide between, oh, is it ethical to promote products or do ad placement, where as journalism that's a big no. But I think that in YouTube journalism we found kind of a nuance in that sometimes it is okay to promote products and to, you know, further your channel.
One thing that I actually think I learned this semester is how similar the way people make money on YouTube is to the way actual mainstream journalism makes money. Like, for example, we all make money from products, whether they're being advertised or even in some local news being inserted into the newscast. Mainstream journalism has kind of the same ethical dilemmas that YouTube does to some extent.
One like main thing with YouTube that differentiates it from like the traditional news outlets is like there's this aspect of you don't necessarily need to have the same regiments you do. For example, in news you would never see somebody without like their title card, their name and occupation underneath, whereas in YouTube you might experience something like Channel 5 where there's people who you don't know who they are, you just get their opinions and their voices and stuff.
I want to elaborate a little bit on like the real name aspect. You talk about like how like in journalism you can know one's real name and their age and stuff. I feel like now if you are doing something on YouTube, a lot of things kind of like identify their identity, like their Twitter, their Instagram, their YouTube channel. So I feel like not knowing their real name is like no longer that important, but it's more about like they identify like this and this and this on the internet.
So that rule of like you always have to have the person's full name and you always have to have like where they're from or whatever, I realize that that's the convention of mainstream journalism that isn't necessarily right, always. There's times when it's right, but certainly in journalism class they always tell you, do they not, Emma? You always get their name, make sure you get the spelling right, but you get their age, get their profession, and that is necessary for a lot of reporting, but maybe it's not necessary for all reporting. So in YouTube, we shear off some of the excess sort of rules that kind of got stuck in journalism. I'm trying to think what other rules maybe are not quite as necessary. This like authoritative journalistic voice, I think actually sounds kind of bad on YouTube.
I think like having more fun with it on YouTube is really important because audiences don't just want like news or like information. They want to be entertained at the same time. On YouTube, you pick what you watch. It's not put on for you. So I think you have to be able to grab people a little more with more personality.
Actually, I don't know if I agree with what Lucas said, because a lot of what comes at you on YouTube, you don't pick out. It just comes to you. And so you have a responsibility as, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, make sure that the content you're putting out there can be seen by anybody. And really anybody, not just your audience, because that's the responsibility you have when you put information that represents you onto the internet.
Different topic?
I'm kind of like introverted, like in public. I don't want to talk to strangers, but like this class forced me to like interview people in Washington Square and talk to my favorite influencers. So that, I don't know, that changed me.
If I can translate that a little bit into what that means for journalism, is a lot of people on YouTube and social media are self-contained. Like they get all their information from watching YouTube and consuming mainstream media and maybe TV and maybe other social media, and they repackage stuff for YouTube. Whereas I think what you're saying is you have to step outside of that. You have to talk to actual real people. You have to ask for someone for an interview, and you got the interview. Getting outside voices as opposed to this echo chamber of social media, I think that's real journalism that we could see more of on YouTube. Okay, who else got something for us? Olivia, you got something for us?
Well, when I was getting my interviews, I had to ask quite a few people because I wasn't really getting any replies from the first few, but then I kind of had to switch my message around. It was less like, hey, I love your page, can we do an interview? It was more just like, I just introduced myself, and then they replied, and then I was like, oh, well, I really love the message you're like saying, like I would love to like get to know you and like talk to you. I'm also doing a video, and then they were like, okay, sure. So I guess.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay, so when I did my interview, I sent like a very short message of like, hello, this is my name, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And like, here are the factors that you might not want to be in this. Like, I may need your real name, I may need to record you, and like this might go up public on YouTube. Like the first thing I tell them is like, here are things that you might regret. If you don't regret all of them, like contact me.
We've already heard your personality should be a part of it, but what about your opinion? Of course, in standard journalism, we don't want your opinion, quote unquote, in the piece, although we also know that all journalism is biased in some way, if by nothing else, by what you leave out of the piece, or even what you choose to write about.
In terms of opinions, I think there's a lot of convention that like journalists have in terms of written pieces, but as long as your opinion isn't coloring very obviously what you're saying, or you're discrediting someone else's opinion or perspective, and you're researching everything thoroughly and presenting that, I think that it's valuable to be a part of the story.
Are there cases where your opinion would sort of immediately turn off some chunk of your audience, so you would want to avoid giving that opinion? Or maybe you want an audience that agrees largely with you.
Like, I would argue that any form of storytelling has opinion in it anyway. The way that you construct a story, what you put first, how you emphasize certain things, how you phrase certain things, the opinion will always be there. It just depends on how you present it. So as long as it's not sensationalized, or it's not meant to attract a certain amount of attention, or it's like the intention behind it is to be open and to acknowledge the complexity of most issues, I feel like it's good.
Would you want a right-wing audience for your channel?
Depends on what you're looking for. So if I wanted to get money out of creating content, I would want a right-wing audience, because that increases engagement. If you're trying to make a business out of being on social media, you have to acknowledge how engagement feeds into it. So in terms of that, like, anyone commenting on it fuels conversation, and that fuels money. I know that like social media can create a lot of like safe spaces and like communities online for people too. So it's like, if your intention going into it is to create a community that is very like-minded and wants to talk about topics at a certain level of depth that like you don't get at other places, then that could be, you wouldn't want an audience that doesn't agree with you on your channel. Like nowadays, the channels that are successful, just from like an observer's point of view, have a specific purpose when they go into it.
Well, like for example, if we take Lucas making videos about Italian sandwiches, he obviously does not want a vegetarian audience. Is that safe to say?
I don't know. I think that's not fair because sometimes vegetarians like to live vicariously.
What about making money? What are the limits?
Like say you become sponsored by a large conglomeration or something, you have to have the responsibility of understanding kind of like that you have an audience and they're going to interpret what you're saying, and if you I guess like work for a company or you get bought up by a company, your voice is no longer one of journalistic neutrality. In this new landscape of understanding like the digital realm and making money and doing journalism there, it's important to remember that there are more obstacles in the way of your own ethicality, if that's a word, your own ethics as a content creator, but also as a journalist. And that's not something you have to navigate as much when you're just a journalist.
Let's go to Emma. Can you just say what your channel is kind of about and who you would or would not take money from if you developed this into a commercial business?
So I was talking about like sustainability, but like from a New York standpoint, like an urban sustainability standpoint. I feel like sponsorships are okay on YouTube. It's not like directly related to what you're making content on.
If you're some solar panel company wanted to be on your channel, now you don't really talk about solar panels, but they're interested in it because they probably perceive that the people watching this might be interested.
I think that's okay if it's related, but I don't know, I would just be careful. And
who would you turn down?
Who would I turn down? I don't know, maybe like City Bike.
Oh, that's
or
a good
like if I wanted to like make a critique or like a review of it, I would be like uncomfortable saying my opinion if I were taking money from them.
Someone here said, I think if you're going to say you're a journalist on YouTube, you should do X, Y, and Z. Well, to what extent would these journalistic ethics or procedures or whatever be good for any YouTube channel?
I think that even though YouTube guidelines go against misinformation, I think that people on YouTube tend to capitalize off of controversy. And not that journalism can't do that, but I think that when you take an important issue like medical information or political information and kind of skew it in a way that will get you the most views, I think that kind of is unethical. And I still think that even though it goes against the guidelines, people still do it, and there's a lot of fake news and people profiting off of saying things just for the sake of saying them.
What you were saying about like not spreading like fake news or like disinformation, I think something that Angela brought up at last class was like you sort of more expect your viewers to like directly comment on your videos. So I feel like even more so you should be like expecting anybody from anywhere to like comment something. So, like you should be able to like defend your opinion with like facts from like all viewpoints. You should expect to get like people questioning what you're saying.
What would be some ways to convince an audience this is not your average YouTube channel? I really do know what I'm talking about, and here's how you know.
Well, you can like link sources in the description. You can add a little thing at the end, a little credit type thing, and then also just like take a boring article and then maybe animate over it so you're getting the points across, but you know it's not words.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So taking super boring stuff and making it lively for a YouTube audience, but still maybe saying where you got it, so people can, and even linking to it in the description or something. I'd like to thank everyone for contributing. I hope you guys out there have learned something or found this useful. Okay, folks, to me, that was completely worth it, not only because of the great contributions from my class, but because I got some Cheez-Its, which are delicious, and they are not sponsoring this video. Oh!